So great. So I know before working with this, how long were you searching for, Kevin?
It had been about 4.5 months,
Mhm.
closing in on 5 months. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, um,
At what point did you kind of say, I need some help, and you kind of decided to work with us?
Yeah, it was after my approach up until that point had been applying to jobs on Indeed.com, local jobs. I'd applied to about 70 of them,
Hmm.
and I'd had a few phone interviews, but things hadn't progressed beyond that. And I was tired and frustrated. I was like, okay, there's COVID, but people are still got to be finding and getting jobs. I need some help. And uh, I think I had done an online session with you guys that you guys had reached out prior
mhm.
to, and that was that got me thinking as well. And when I got a follow up call, I was like, let's give this a try. And it's a different system. I mean, it's not your traditional job search, but it was very effective and got me to the next level, which was getting a job. So.
Yeah. And I remember too. So it looks like we're about the 60-day mark. So that's great. And I remember prepping you for interviews and whatnot. And I do remember too that one you were like very nervous. Remember,
Yeah.
we won't go into all the details, but you were like very nervous about that.
I was. It had been 5+ months, and I hadn't done any. A few years back, 2.5 years back, when I'd been doing another job search. By the time I got to final interviews for a job that I had, I'd already had a few on-sites and jobs that I was kind of half interested, half not sure about. This go around was a lot slower, and so that it all kind of came together, and you gave me some good advice there, Tim. I appreciate that. So.
Yeah. So, Kevin, working with us, what did you find to be the most valuable part of the program?
Great question. I think it was probably the connecting online with friends and coworkers from previous jobs who were now at companies that I was interested in.
Yeah.
And
that's how you got your position. And we always talk about how painful that is. That's why I bring that up all the time. Like, you're in a search for 4.5 months. You're worried about applying to all these jobs. You've been on a couple interviews. They didn't pan out. And, when it's that person that but you just never, you never asked them, or you didn't know how to ask, or how do I do this? What are the right questions to ask? And people around you,
It was one of those things where once I did it, it was like, I should have been doing this before, but I hadn't, and it wasn't like I didn't know these guys. I did know these guys, but it wasn't on the top of my list prior to working with you guys as hey, you need to do this in order to, learn more about the company, have inside, connections, et cetera. So.
Yeah. And I think that the reason that some people don't do that is not a lot of people like talking about how great they are, and not a lot of people like asking for help. So a lot of the times, even their friends, family members, peers, old boss, a lot of people are kind of scared to reach out to them. And I'm like, hey, if we can't ask our friends, right? If we can't ask people whether we worked with, how are we going to ask someone who we don't know, for help?
Yeah. Exactly.
So what advice would you have for someone, Kevin, who's just in your shoes? Maybe they've been in their search for 5 months. Maybe they have contacted their friends, and what advice would you have for someone who's considering working with us? Like, if they were here right now, what would you tell them?
Well, I've given that a little bit of thought. First of all, I guess there's multiple tools that make up the program. And I think it's important to use all of the tools, not just a couple of them. So, following it's a step-by-step process, identifying the companies, the connections, all of that is important, and you need to go through it. Sometimes, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of pre-recorded material that you guys make available, and I thought I was getting after things pretty good, but when I saw percent complete, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is more than what I thought it was going to be. But you have to stay the course, and there's a method behind the madness. And so using the tools, following the steps, and then for me personally, the interview prep and having somebody to talk to about next steps and whether the written offer is, having an impartial third party that you can talk with and say, hey, this is where I'm at. What are your suggestions for maybe how I script this message, or is this offer, am I missing something here? Is there something else I should be asking for?
Yeah.
So those things are all, I think, unique to your program and very helpful.
Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls, it's like the salary. How do you make sure you're controlling the process? Are you branding yourself the right way at the start of the call? Do you know what questions to ask? Do you know how to respond? And when you incorporate all this, it becomes very overwhelming. And we know, right, the only way we get better is practicing, and as we practice, you started to hone in these skills, and obviously it showed.
I think something else too, you'd mentioned a couple of points, not to get too focused on job titles. As it turned out in my particular situation, my previous job was at a director level. My new job will be as a project engineer, but it's a great job. The salary is almost identical to what I was earning. An important part of the package for me was finding a good company closer to home, and this checks that box. Well,
it's not just close to home too. We talked about this. This place is right down the street from you. You can't beat that.
No, it's awesome. I'm really pleased with how that's worked out. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I do know, as we're wrapping up here, people do get hung up on these job titles, but very, very often we have someone who was a director who's now a senior manager that sometimes make more money. It just happened to Gal recently. So thanks so much for sharing this with us, Kevin. We really appreciate it. And we obviously wish you the best of luck at your new job.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.